What if I told you that addiction isn't really about weakness? What if it isn't about being broken or having no willpower? Carl Jung believed addiction was something far deeper. He saw it as the soul itself crying out for meaning. Every drink, every dose, every compulsive behavior, he thought it was a hidden attempt to touch the sacred, to feel whole, to reconnect with something greater. Modern doctors like Gabor Maté echo the same idea. Addiction is not the real problem. The real question is, why the pain? Think about it. The emptiness that keeps coming back. The urge that feels bigger than you. The endless loop of regret and relief. Jung would say that's not madness. It's the shadow. A repressed part of yourself demanding to be heard. And here's the good news. What feels like a curse may actually be a clue. Addiction is not just destruction, it's also direction. It points to what your soul is missing. Stay with me because in this video we're going to uncover Jung's radical view of addiction, why he called it a frustrated spiritual quest, how childhood pain silently sets the stage for compulsion, why the shadow feeds addiction until we face it, and most importantly, how to reclaim your power by seeking not perfection but wholeness. Addiction is everywhere. Some people think of alcoholics or drug users when they hear the word. But it's not only that. It's also the endless scrolling on your phone, the food you eat when you're not hungry, the shopping spree that leaves you empty again, the gambling ticket, the one-night stand, the overwork that keeps you from resting. The World Health Organization estimates that hundreds of millions of people worldwide are touched by addiction in some form. In the United States alone, over 70 million people live with either substance or behavioral addictions, but numbers don't tell the full story. Behind every statistic is a person, and behind every addiction is pain. Gabor Maté, who spent decades working with those society often forgets, homeless addicts, trauma survivors, put it this way. The question is not why the addiction, the question is why the pain, too. Jung would have agreed. In fact, he believed addiction was not only a psychological wound but also a spiritual crisis. He saw it as a symptom of being cut off from the self, the deeper center of the psyche. When we lose touch with that center, we grab substitutes, we drink, we use, we distract, we consume. So if you've ever wondered why habits feel unbreakable, or why people destroy themselves chasing things they don't even enjoy, Jung would say, don't judge. Look deeper. Addiction is not about pleasure. It's about anesthesia. It's about soothing an inner wound that words cannot reach. In this video, we'll uncover the layers of that wound, guided by Jung, by Maté, and by the wisdom of traditions like Buddhism. And we'll see what true healing might look like. Not just abstinence, but wholeness. Addiction is pain, not weakness. Let's start with a shift in perspective. Most people see addiction as weakness, a moral defect, a sign of being broken. But what if it's actually a sign of strength twisted the wrong way? Think of it like this. The brain of an addict isn't weak, it's adaptive. It has learned to survive by finding relief where it could. Substances and compulsive behaviors release dopamine, the chemical that signals reward, safety, and connection. For many, those experiences were absent in childhood. Love was conditional, attention was missing, safety was unstable. So the brain improvised. It found relief in alcohol, drugs, pornography, work, food, or distraction, not because the person wanted to be bad, but because the nervous system needed peace. This is where the Buddhist metaphor of the hungry ghost comes in. These beings have huge empty stomachs and tiny throats. They can never be full. Gabor Maté uses this image to describe addicts. They are not greedy. They are starving for connection, presence, belonging. Seen this way, addiction isn't about chasing pleasure. It's about numbing pain. The drink, the pill, the click. It's anesthesia. It quiets the inner scream. Carl Jung saw the same thing. Addiction, he said, is not just a vice. It is the soul's attempt to reconnect with something sacred, but in the wrong place. What looks like destruction on the outside is often desperation on the inside. B. The spiritual crisis. Jung's view. Carl Jung went further than most psychologists. He said addiction is a spiritual crisis. In his famous letter to Bill Wilson, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Jung used the phrase spiritus contra spiritum, the true spirit against the false spirit. Alcohol, drugs, or compulsions, he argued, are poor substitutes for real spiritual experience. They mimic transcendence, but only for a moment. Think about it. Why does someone drink until they forget? Why does someone use until they feel high? For a few seconds, there's peace. For a moment, the world feels bearable. It feels almost sacred. But then the crash comes, and the emptiness grows deeper. Jung believed that the desire itself was not wrong. The problem wasn't what the addict was seeking. The problem was where they were looking. Behind every compulsion, he said, lies a legitimate impulse of the soul, an impulse to reconnect with the self, the deeper center of the psyche. When that impulse is blocked, repressed, or denied, it leaks out in destructive ways. This is why Jung insisted that true recovery is not only about abstaining, it's about building a symbolic life. It's about reconnecting with meaning, with ritual, with community, with the self. Without that deeper connection, abstinence alone is fragile. The hunger remains. See, the shadow and addiction. But there's another layer. Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is everything about yourself that you've repressed, denied, or hidden away. Anger, shame, fear, desire, vulnerability, ambition. All the emotions you were told were bad as a child. Did you cry and get told, stop being weak? Did you get angry and hear, good kids don't behave like that? Did you crave attention and feel you didn't deserve it? All of those feelings don't vanish. They don't die. They sink. They sink into the unconscious and become the shadow. But what is hidden doesn't stay silent. It comes back in disguised forms: anxiety, rage, depression, self-sabotage, and yes, addiction. Jung said, what you do not make conscious appears in your life as fate. Addiction, in this sense, is the shadow's voice. It's the unconscious, demanding to be noticed. Every relapse, every uncontrollable urge, every destructive loop is not simply a bad choice. It's a part of yourself you've buried, trying to surface. This is why self-control alone often fails. Because you're not just fighting a substance, you're wrestling with your own shadow. And unless that shadow is faced, it will keep steering from the dark. D. Childhood trauma and the roots of addiction. Before the first drink, before the first high, before the first compulsive act, there was pain. Gabor Maté spent decades with addicts on the margins of society. He noticed something striking. Every single one had a story of deep emotional wound, abuse, neglect, abandonment, or simply a lack of love. But trauma isn't only dramatic events. Sometimes it's subtle. Parents too stressed to connect, emotions ignored, a child feeling unseen or unsafe. The nervous system still registers this as trauma. Science backs this up. A child's brain literally wires itself based on early emotional experiences. If nurtured with safety and love, the brain learns regulation. If raised in neglect or chaos, the brain learns survival through hypervigilance, disconnection, or compulsive soothing. Addiction, then, becomes like an emotional prosthesis. It gives temporary relief where real connection was missing. A drink becomes a stand-in for love. A high becomes a substitute for safety. Workaholism becomes a mask for worth. This is why Maté says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It is connection. Think about that. Recovery isn't just about saying no to the substance. It's about saying yes to connection with others and with yourself. E. Descent, not just sobriety. Here's where most self-help advice gets it wrong. We're told, just use willpower. Think positive. Change habits. Stay busy. But Jung warned that real healing doesn't work like that. He said, "No tree grows to the sky without its roots touching hell." To heal addiction, you don't climb up. You go down. You go into the unconscious. You face the shadow. You face the pain you've been numbing. This descent is not pretty. It's not quick. It's often lonely. But it's necessary. Because addiction is not just an enemy. It's also a messenger. The compulsion that destroys you is the same one that reveals where you are wounded. Jung would say, don't wage war against yourself. Don't frame addiction as a battle to conquer. Instead, see it as an invitation, a distorted signal pointing you back to the self. Addiction shows you where the wound is. The work is to stop running and listen. F. Path to wholeness and healing. So if abstinence alone isn't enough, what does healing look like? Jung said the soul does not seek perfection. It seeks wholeness. That means the goal isn't to erase the shadow, but to integrate it, to bring the unconscious into light so it no longer controls you. Practices that help. Self-reflection. When emotions hit, ask, what is this really showing me? Journaling can turn pain into language, chaos into pattern. Therapy. Trauma-informed therapy. Create safe space to process what once felt unbearable. Community. Programs like AA work not just because of abstinence, but because of connection, shared stories, belonging, accountability. Spiritual practices. Meditation, ritual, prayer, symbolic acts. These reconnect you with meaning, with something larger than the ego. Body work. Trauma lives in the body. Practices like breathwork, yoga, or somatic therapy help release stored pain. Healing is less about fixing and more about re-inhabiting yourself, reclaiming the parts of you that were exiled, becoming present again. Recovery, then, is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you always were, before pain taught you to escape. So what does all of this mean? It means addiction is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are wounded, and wounds can heal. Carl Jung showed us that addiction is often a spiritual crisis, a misdirected attempt to reconnect with the self. Gabor Maté showed us that behind every compulsion lies pain. Buddhism reminds us that the hunger isn't for substances but for presence, connection, and belonging. Addiction is not just a disease to eliminate. It is a messenger. It points directly to where the soul is starving. And healing doesn't require perfection. It requires integration. Facing the shadow. Accepting that pain is part of you, but it doesn't have to control you. So the next time you or someone you love struggles with addiction, remember, the question is not, why the addiction? The question is, why the pain? And when that pain is faced, when connection is rebuilt, when the shadow is integrated, freedom is no longer just possible, it is inevitable. Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this perspective resonated most with you? Was it Jung's idea of addiction as a spiritual crisis? Was it Maté's reminder that the opposite of addiction is connection? Or was it the shadow, those hidden parts of yourself that control you until you face them? Comment below. Your story matters, and it might help someone else who feels alone. If this video gave you clarity, give it a like. It helps more people find this message. And if you want more content on philosophy, psychology, and the hidden forces shaping our lives, subscribe to Mind Obscura and turn on the bell. In the next video, we'll continue with another of Jung's key ideas, how facing the shadow not only heals addiction but unlocks creativity, meaning, and freedom. Remember, the soul does not seek perfection, it seeks wholeness. And when you face the shadow, you don't just overcome addiction, you find yourself again.